Indian philosopher Shrimi Varma beautifully articulated on Twitter today that the problem with creating a hyperbole when it comes to trolling Nepo kids is that even accurate criticism dilutes itself in a sea of mindless hate. So, irrespective of what I say here through this video, the comments will present a few who will actually want to dive deep on several aspects of this project, and most will come with their reactionary statements on the basis of those associated with the project and what they hate about the restrictive and incestuous construct that is the Hindi film industry. Let's understand what the creators of the Archies are intending to do with the project, what I feel about the trailer, and especially the topic regarding relatability that often seems to creep in whenever there are character portrayals of anyone with an iota of luxury in India. The adaptation of Archies, directed by Zoya Akhtar, presents a fictional hill station called Riverdale and is set in the 60s. Most of the characters representing the Anglo-Indian community, who are essentially those who live in India and whose father or any other male ancestors belong to a European lineage. This community, and the more you read about their representation in the Indian community, their aesthetic, and the towns in which they lived, you realize that Zoya attempts to represent the same, but also by making the frames fantastical. So you've got the bubblegum inspired storybook visuals that one would imagine in a real life adaptation of Archies. What's important to understand is that the makers are not aiming for nuanced and compelling storytelling with this high school musical. And for those seeking for compelling dramas about students, competitive examinations in India, and the struggle most teenagers deal with in this country, there is a plethora of stories, especially done by TVF, that has mastered that craft. What's important, however, is to judge the product for what it is rather than what it should be. Because if I land up in Big Chill and complain about them not serving me authentic butter chicken, it's not about the chef being incapable. I just ended up at the wrong restaurant. I do love the set design, cinematography, and costumes of the film, at least in the trailer. There is a sense of opulence and abandon in each frame, and it seems like they've left no stone unturned in actually developing and building such sets from scratch. I remember there was an active discussion on Twitter describing the historical inaccuracies of the Archies teaser, as it presented a bun that was not even introduced in the Indian community until the 70s. And this is where I draw the line where the film analysis becomes so microscopic, where the intention of a breezy teeny bopper film goes for a toss. When you realize the cinematographer Byomkesh Bakshi is taking charge of Archies, you're not that surprised that the frames look so beautiful. I've grown up with the comics, so let's talk about the cast. I think Yuvraj Menda as Dilton Doily is right on point. The stereotypical nerd, fascinated by science and analytical even in regular conversations, he is unassuming, one that blends with the crowd, and I think the casting is bang on. The standout for me especially is Vedant Raina as Reggie, immediately showcasing the smug and arrogant attitude one associates with the jock who is in constant conflict with Archie through the comics. I know the biggest talking topic is going to be the assessment of the Nepo babies in the project. For a second, when Khushi as Betty was delivering dialogues, I couldn't help but think whether Janvi has dubbed for her role, because she sounds absolutely identical. I think Zoya has mastered the art of portraying the rich spoiled brat, something that we saw in Kalki's character in Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara, slightly catty, entitled and narcissistic, and I think these elements really stood out with Suhana's self-obsessive act as Veronica in the few snippets we saw. I think it's a good spin that they've got Archie playing a singer, being an active member of a band, Reggie attempting to be a stand-up comic, as the main crux of the story is going to be about protesting rich capitalists. So one uses their voice or music to essentially combat characters played by Vinay Pathak and Veronica's father, played by Ali Khan. While Khushi doesn't have really an impression in the trailer with her innocent and understated Betty, I think there is more room for Suhana to shine because Veronica is just more organically expressive and loud. Agastya Nanda seems quite proficient actually with his dialogue delivery, and I am a huge fan of Mihir Ahuja, who is playing the role of Jughead. So I just can't make a video and shout at the top of my lungs as if the Archies trailer was the most cringe-inducing marketing snippet I've ever seen, because it isn't. It seems fun, light-hearted, and no one is really sticking out like a sore thumb. Those ready with their pitchforks to fight against the cause of nepotism may not like this take, but it isn't a bad trailer. As I am a sucker for musicals, I'm actually the most interested to see the choreography and songs in the film. Especially impressed with the choreography of the song that they just released, where the cast is seen executing different combinations of the Charleston that gained a lot of popularity in the 20s. There is no denying that a certain section of people will only tune in for the Archies, as the masses feel slightly alienated when one is to be convinced that this can also be the life of a regular Indian teenager. But I wonder whether this same mindset restricts a viewer from actually only watching shows which are in the confines of their reality. When one watches Sex Education, which is essentially about high school kids being sexually active and finding themselves while being dressed like extras from the Hunger Games, Indian audiences are avid watchers of the show, never complain about the relatability factor of the show missing and it being a hindrance to them connecting with the characters. And I think this is where people undermine the capability of Zoya Akhtar, who, despite portraying characters of affluent backgrounds in films like Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara and Dil Dhadakne Do, still made us care about the characters, their family dynamics, and their motivations. See, it's pretty clear that The Archies is a soft launch for the talent, especially for those who come from film families, so that one can see their acting chops and associate them with projects ahead. Even though the Indian audience may complain about nepotism every week, the most talked about launches is not when Tripti Dimri and Avinash Tiwari hit it out of the park in Laila Majnu, but when Ananya Pandey got launched opposite Tiger Shroff in Student of the Year 2. In the subsequent year, even the haters give more attention to the launch of Nepo babies than actually putting the money where their mouth is in the pursuit of supporting outsiders. While this battle is never ending and people will stick to their guns of dismissing Archies as unrelatable from the onset, I know many will tune in for the sheer curiosity they have in seeing whether the cast is capable of actually bringing their A game in the acting department. I did a test of just posting on Twitter that Suhana nailed the personality of Veronica in the trailer, and everyone is rattled and fuming in the comments. I think more of this will follow as the film drops next month, so I guess it's just a waiting game.